The first warning came as a subtle vibration, almost imperceptible, but not to Elena Rodriguez. Her fingers, calloused from years of hands-on engineering and military training, detected the microscopic tremor before the station's advanced sensor arrays could process the threat. Jupiter mining colony Epsilon 7 wasn't just another outpost. It was humanity's most advanced deep space resource extraction facility, a testament to human engineering prowess. Carved into the radiation-hardened asteroids that drifted near Jupiter's massive gravitational field, the colony represented decades of human innovation. Modular habitation units seamlessly integrated with mining infrastructure, creating a living, breathing ecosystem that could adapt to the most extreme environments. Jack Martinez, Elena's chief engineer, was reviewing the latest microgravity fabrication reports when the first alarms began to scream. His augmented reality display flickered, a holographic web of interconnected systems that most would find incomprehensible, but to him was as natural as breathing. "Captain," Jack's voice was calm, almost clinical, "we've got multiple unknown signatures approaching. They're not matching any known human or terrestrial scanning profiles." Elena Rodriguez had spent her career walking the razor's edge between military strategy and engineering innovation. At 42, she bore the marks of someone who had rebuilt more systems under fire than most engineers design in a lifetime. A complex network of neural implants traced the side of her neck, a result of experimental interface technologies that allowed her to communicate directly with complex machinery. "Zornak," she whispered, more to herself than to her crew. The alien civilization had been a distant rumor until now. Whispered tales from deep space reconnaissance teams, fragments of intercepted communications, occasional debris from encounters at the galaxy's far reaches. Most military strategists had dismissed them as propaganda or deep space myths. Elena knew better. The colony's defensive systems began to activate, a symphony of mechanical precision that would have impressed any military tactician. Massive electromagnetic shields expanded from the station's outer hull, adaptive nanocomposite armor plates shifting like living tissue. But Elena knew these would be little more than a momentary inconvenience to a truly advanced attack force. "Jack, I need options," she called, her neural implants already interfacing with the station's core systems. Around them, the mining colony transformed. Workers moved with practiced efficiency, each person understanding their role in what might be humanity's first true confrontation with an alien threat. Jack's hands moved across holographic interfaces, reconfiguring system after system. "We're going to have to get creative," he muttered. These defensive protocols were designed for meteor impacts and solar radiation, not a potentially hostile alien encounter. The first blast came without warning. A massive energy discharge that would have vaporized any traditional space station punched through their initial defensive perimeter. But Epsilon 7 was anything but traditional. As sections of the outer hull were breached, internal bulkheads and modular units began to reconfigure, creating improvised defensive positions and emergency escape routes. Elena watched as her crew transformed from miners and engineers to defenders. This was humanity's true strength, not in having the most advanced weapons, but in the ability to adapt, to turn any situation into an opportunity for survival and innovation. "Seal all non-critical sections," she commanded. "Divert power from mining extraction, defensive systems, and someone get me a full spectral analysis of those weapon signatures." Jack was already ahead of her. Holographic displays showed complex analysis of the alien weapon technology, breaking down energy signatures, material composition, and potential structural weaknesses. Where most would see an insurmountable threat, he saw a complex system waiting to be understood, manipulated, overcome. The station shuddered again. Breaches began to appear in multiple sections. But instead of panic, there was a sense of calculated response. Emergency fabrication units were already converting mining equipment into makeshift defensive tools. Cutting lasers became improvised weapons. Radiation shielding was reconfigured into electromagnetic pulse generators. Elena locked eyes with Jack. No words were necessary. They both understood that this moment was more than just a battle for survival. This was humanity's first true test against an unknown threat, a moment that would define their species' approach to interstellar conflict. "Let's show them what humans can do," Elena said, a slight smile crossing her battle-worn face. The quantum communication hub looked more like a cathedral of technology than a military installation. Nestled in the high-altitude research complex of the Andes Mountains, it was humanity's most advanced communication research center, a place where language, technology, and psychology converged in ways no civilization had ever imagined. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before a massive holographic display, his fingers dancing across quantum entanglement communication interfaces that pulsed with impossible complexity. Unlike traditional military strategists, Chen wasn't just a scientist. He was a hybrid, part linguist, part psychologist, part quantum communication engineer. The Zornak aren't just a military force. He explained to his team of 12 specialists from disciplines that hadn't even existed a decade ago. They're a collective consciousness, a single, massive neural network spanning entire star systems. The team watched as complex linguistic algorithms began to map the fundamental communication structures of the Zornak collective. Most would have seen an incomprehensible alien language. Chen saw a complex system waiting to be understood and exploited. Dr. Elena Vargas, a xenolinguistic expert with neural implants that allowed her to process multiple communication patterns simultaneously, leaned forward. "Their language isn't just a method of communication," she observed. "It's a control mechanism. Every word, every concept is designed to reinforce their hierarchical structure." The Zornak believed in absolute order. Their entire civilization was built on a strict hierarchical system where individual thought was not just discouraged, it was fundamentally impossible. Billions of minds interconnected, each functioning as a small part of a massive, unified consciousness. Humanity's approach would be something they could never anticipate. "We're not going to fight their communication," Marcus explained. "We're going to infect it." The team began developing what would become known as the cognitive dissonance transmission, a communication strategy that was part linguistic hack, part psychological warfare, part pure technological innovation. Using quantum entanglement communication systems, they began broadcasting signals that did more than just transmit information. These were carefully crafted linguistic constructs designed to introduce concepts the Zornak collective had never encountered. Individual choice, creative dissent, the power of unexpected solutions. The first transmission was almost poetic in its complexity. Mathematical proofs that demonstrated multiple simultaneous solutions to problems. Linguistic structures that allowed for individual interpretation. Concepts of individual identity that ran completely contrary to the Zornak's collective consciousness. "We're introducing a virus of individuality," Elena whispered. The quantum communication arrays began to pulse. Each transmission was a carefully crafted piece of linguistic art. Mathematical theorems that challenged collective thinking, philosophical concepts that introduced the radical notion of individual perspective, creative problem-solving frameworks that emphasized unique individual approaches. Within hours, the first signs of disruption began to appear in Zornak communication networks. Small fractures, momentary hesitations in their collective decision-making processes, microscopic moments of individual doubt that had never existed before. Dr. Chen watched the holographic displays with a combination of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. This wasn't just a communication strategy. This was a fundamental challenge to the Zornak's entire way of existing. "Look," Elena pointed to a section of the display where Zornak communication patterns were showing unprecedented variations, small deviations, momentary independent thought processes that were immediately suppressed, but grew more frequent with each transmission. The Zornak had spent millennia perfecting a civilization built on absolute collective unity. Humanity was introducing a concept more dangerous than any weapon: the possibility of individual choice. Marcus Chen allowed himself a slight smile. "We're not just fighting a war," he told his team. We're offering them a different way of existing. The quantum communication arrays continued to pulse. Each transmission was a carefully crafted invitation to individual thought, a technological Trojan horse designed to challenge the very foundations of an entire civilization. The first true battle would be fought not with weapons, but with ideas. The asteroid reclamation vessel Phoenix wasn't just a ship. It was a living testament to human innovation, a mobile ecosystem that defied every conventional understanding of resource management. Captain Lucia Rodriguez, no direct relation to Elena, but sharing the same fierce determination, stood on the bridge, watching as the ship's advanced fabrication systems processed another massive asteroid into usable resources. Her crew was a blend of engineers, material scientists, and adaptive systems specialists, each member more of a scientific Swiss Army knife than a traditional spaceship crew. "Incoming debris field," announced Maya Chen, the ship's primary resource optimization specialist. Her neural interface flickered with real-time analysis, breaking down the composition of thousands of fragments before most computers could even begin scanning. The Phoenix was designed to be the ultimate survival machine. Where traditional military vessels carried fixed supplies and relied on complex supply chains, this ship was an almost sentient resource conversion system. Microgravity fabrication units could break down virtually any material: asteroid rock, space debris, even damaged enemy technology, into base components that could be immediately repurposed. "Zornak destroyer fragments," Maya called out, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "Composition is 73% rare metallic alloys we can use for advanced nano-composite armor plating." Most militaries would have seen space debris as waste. The Phoenix saw it as an opportunity. Chief Engineer Diego Martinez moved between the fabrication units, his augmented reality display showing multiple simultaneous conversion processes. A piece of asteroid became hull reinforcement. Damaged communication arrays were stripped and rebuilt into sensor systems. Even the energy released during material conversion was captured and redistributed. "We're not just a ship," Diego often told new crew members. "We're a living ecosystem that happens to move through space." The Phoenix represented a fundamental reimagining of resource management. Traditional spacefaring civilizations saw resources as finite, something to be carefully hoarded and protected. Humans saw them as dynamic, constantly transformable opportunities. A massive energy surge from a nearby solar flare would have disabled most ships. The Phoenix's adaptive solar collectors not only absorbed the energy, but used the unexpected input to boost its fabrication capabilities. Where others saw a potential threat, the ship's integrated AI saw a power source. Lucia watched as the ship's systems continued their constant dance of conversion and optimization. They had already been deployed for 6 months, operating far beyond traditional supply lines, constantly rebuilding and reimagining themselves. "Incoming Zornak Patrol Squadron," Maya announced, her voice calm. Most would have seen this as a threat. Lucia saw it as another resource opportunity. The ship's defensive systems weren't just about blocking attacks. They were about understanding and adapting to them. As the Zornak ships approached, the Phoenix's exterior began to shift. Nano-composite armor plates reconfigured, energy absorption systems prepared to capture and redirect weapon signatures. "Extract and analyze," Lucia commanded. The first energy blast from the Zornak ships was immediately studied, its quantum signature broken down, its energy potential mapped. Within moments, the Phoenix's systems were developing counter-frequencies, adaptive shielding that would make future attacks less effective. Diego's fabrication units were already working, converting fragments of the initial attack into reinforcement materials. A destroyed sensor array became a new communication system. Weapon impact sites were immediately sealed and rebuilt. "We're generating more resources from their attack than they're using to fight us," Maya observed, a hint of pride in her voice. The Zornak saw warfare as a process of destruction. Humanity saw it as a process of transformation. As the battle continued, the Phoenix continued its relentless optimization. Each moment of conflict was an opportunity. Each fragment of destroyed technology was a potential resource. The ship wasn't just surviving, it was evolving. Lucia Rodriguez looked out at the vast expanse of space and saw not a battlefield, but an infinite canvas of potential. The universe wasn't something to be conquered. It was something to be understood, adapted to, transformed. "Keep converting," she told her crew. "We've only just begun." The Orion Nebula burned with an impossible intensity. Its cosmic gases transformed into a battlefield that defied every known principle of space warfare. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Prometheus, her neural interfaces dancing with quantum calculation streams that would have overwhelmed any traditional military eye. Around her, the human fleet looked nothing like a conventional armada. 50 ships, each one a living, adaptive system, face down over 250 Zornak battle formations. The odds were impossible. The outcome was anything but certain. Dr. Aisha Nakamura's voice crackled through the communication systems, her research team having prepared for this moment across months of relentless innovation. "We're not just going to fight," she transmitted. "We're going to rewrite the fundamental physics of this engagement." The Zornak fleet represented millennia of technological refinement. Massive kilometer-long vessels with energy weapons that could vaporize entire planetary defense grids. Interconnected combat systems that could predict and counter enemy movements with near-perfect accuracy. A collective consciousness that functioned as a single, massive computational network. They had never encountered anything like the human approach. Elena's first move was nothing short of quantum-level strategic genius. Using gravitational manipulation technologies developed in the hidden research stations of Titan, the human fleet began to reshape the nebula itself. "Activate quantum resonance grid," she commanded. The space around the human ships began to shimmer, not with traditional energy shields, but with complex quantum interference patterns that could redirect, absorb, and transform incoming energy signatures. Where the Zornak expected solid defensive structures, they found something far more complex, a dynamic field that was less a shield and more a living, adaptive barrier. The first Zornak energy wave struck. Most military strategists would have braced for impact. The human fleet seemed to flow around the attack, the quantum resonance grid not just blocking the energy, but capturing its quantum signature, analyzing it in real time, and developing counter-frequencies before the initial attack had even completed. "We're turning their own computational advantages against them," Elena murmured, watching the holographic battle display. Massive sections of the nebula began to move, redirected by the gravitational manipulation technologies. Cosmic gases became weapons. Radiation streams were channeled into precise, targeted disruption fields. The very fabric of space became a tactical asset. Jack Martinez, managing the ship's adaptive systems, was doing something unprecedented. As Zornak vessels attempted to lock onto human ship signatures, the Prometheus began to change. Not just its energy output or its radar profile, but its fundamental quantum state. Partial quantum phasing, Jack announced. Parts of the ship would momentarily exist in multiple quantum states, making traditional targeting systems completely useless. The Zornak collective consciousness began to fragment. Their computational models, designed to predict and counter with near-perfect accuracy, encountered something fundamentally unpredictable. Human ships that could change their quantum state, a battlefield that was constantly, dynamically changing. Weapon signatures that were captured, analyzed, and neutralized faster than they could be generated. Dr. Marcus Chen's psychological warfare transmissions continued in the background, introducing micro-disruptions into the Zornak collective consciousness. Moments of individual doubt, micro-hesitations that spread like a quantum virus through their interconnected systems. One by one, Zornak ships began to break formation, not through traditional damage, but through computational confusion. Their perfectly synchronized collective was encountering something it had never imagined possible: genuine, fundamental uncertainty. They're not just losing, Elena realized. They're experiencing something they've never encountered. the possibility of individual variation. The battle wasn't just a military engagement. It was a fundamental challenge to the Zornak understanding of reality. As the last Zornak formations began to collapse, the Orion Nebula itself seemed to bear witness. Humanity hadn't just won a battle. They had demonstrated an entirely new approach to existence, one where adaptability, individual creativity, and the willingness to reimagine fundamental systems were the most powerful weapons of all. The universe would never be the same again. The Xenotechnology Research Facility on Titan wasn't just a research center. It was humanity's most closely guarded crucible of innovation, a place where captured Zornak technology was transformed from alien artifacts into something entirely new. Dr. Aisha Nakamura stood before a massive containment chamber, her augmented reality interface dancing with quantum-level analysis of a Zornak communication node. Around her, a team of 12 specialists from disciplines that hadn't even existed a decade ago worked with a combination of scientific precision and creative audacity. "We're not reverse engineering," Aisha reminded her team. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of technological potential." The communication node looked like a living crystal, a complex lattice of molecular structures that seemed to pulse with an internal energy. Most research teams would have approached this as a standard technological challenge. Break it down. Understand its components. Create a human equivalent. Dr. Yasmin Chen, a quantum materials specialist, was doing something entirely different. "Look at how the molecular structure responds to quantum-level stimuli," she called out, her neural interfaces projecting complex holographic models that showed the node's internal architecture shifting in real time. "It's not just a communication device, it's a living computational system." Where the Zornak saw their technology as a fixed, perfected system, humans saw it as a dynamic, transformable opportunity. Carlos Rodriguez, the team's primary systems integration specialist, began to map out a radical approach. Instead of trying to replicate the Zornak technology, they would use it as a foundation for something entirely new. A hybrid system that combined alien technological foundations with human innovative thinking. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A Zornak quantum communication array that would have taken their civilization generations to modify was completely restructured by the human team in less than a week. "We're not just improving the technology," Carlos explained, his hands moving across holographic interfaces. "We're fundamentally reimagining what's possible." The team developed what they called adaptive resonance interfaces, technological systems that could dynamically reshape themselves based on computational needs. A single device could transform its internal structure millisecond by millisecond, becoming whatever was most efficient for the current task. Dr. Elena Vargas, a specialist in xenolinguistic computational systems, watched as their first prototype came online. It wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a living proof of human potential. The device began to pulse with an impossible complexity. Where Zornak systems were rigid and predetermined, this hybrid creation seemed to breathe with potential. It could simultaneously process multiple computational streams, reshape its internal architecture, and learn from each interaction. "It's not just adapting," Elena whispered. "It's evolving." Aisha approached the containment chamber, her neural interfaces capturing every microscopic change in the prototype's quantum signature. The device was doing something unprecedented, not just processing information, but understanding it, creating new computational pathways that had never existed before. The implications were staggering. The Zornak had spent millennia perfecting technological systems designed for specific predetermined purposes. Humans were creating technologies that could fundamentally reimagine their own potential with each interaction. "We're not just developing a new technology," Aisha told her team. "We're demonstrating a completely different approach to innovation." Outside the research facility, Titan's methane lakes reflected the facility's massive energy signatures. Quantum computational streams danced across complex holographic interfaces. The prototype continued its impossible evolution, a living testament to human creativity. Carlos looked up from his interfaces, a rare smile crossing his face. The Zornak thought they understood technological superiority. He said, "They have no idea what's coming." The device pulsed again, its molecular structure shifting in ways that would have been impossible according to any previous understanding of physics. Not just a piece of technology, but a living demonstration of humanity's most profound capability. The ability to look at the impossible and see only the next great opportunity. The diplomatic chamber wasn't what the Zornak had expected. Instead of a traditional negotiation space with rigid protocols and fixed positions, it was a dynamic environment that seemed to breathe with possibility. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, surrounded by a team that defied every conventional understanding of diplomatic representation. Dr. Marcus Chen, the linguistic warfare specialist. Dr. Aisha Nakamura, the technological innovator. Jack Martinez, the adaptive systems engineer. Each brought not just expertise, but a fundamentally different approach to interspecies communication. The Zornak delegation arrived as a collective consciousness, a massive quantum-entangled neural network compressed into 5 crystalline forms that pulsed with an internal shared energy. Where most species would have seen an intimidating alien presence, the human team saw an opportunity for mutual understanding. "We're not here to conquer," Elena began, her neural interfaces translating not just words, but contextual meaning, emotional nuance, and potential interpretative layers. "We're here to transform." The Zornak collective hesitated. Their entire civilization was built on a model of absolute control, of predetermined outcomes. Humanity was presenting something they had never encountered: genuine, dynamic potential. Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward, his linguistic analysis systems working at quantum speeds. The translation wasn't just about converting words. It was about bridging fundamentally different ways of understanding existence. "Your collective consciousness sees communication as a method of control," Marcus explained. "We see it as a method of mutual discovery." The chamber itself was a testament to human innovation. Adaptive holographic interfaces that could reshape themselves based on the conversation's emotional and intellectual flow. Quantum communication nodes that could capture not just spoken language, but the complex quantum signatures of emotional and intellectual exchange. Aisha Nakamura began to demonstrate something unprecedented. Using the hybrid technological systems developed from captured Zornak communication nodes, she began to create a real-time visualization of the negotiation. Not just a record of words, but a complex, 3-dimensional map of ideas, potential outcomes, and mutual understanding. The Zornak collective found themselves experiencing something completely foreign. Where they expected a fixed negotiation with predetermined outcomes, they encountered a dynamic process of mutual exploration. Jack Martinez introduced the first truly radical proposal. Instead of traditional territorial exchanges or resource allocations, he suggested a comprehensive technology and cultural exchange program. But this wasn't a simple trade agreement. It was an invitation to fundamental transformation. "We're not offering you our technology," Jack explained. "We're offering you a method of continuous innovation, a way of existing that sees potential in every interaction." The Zornak collective began to fragment, not in conflict, but in genuine intellectual exploration. Small quantum variations appeared in their collective consciousness, moments of individual perspective that had never existed before. Elena Rodriguez watched the negotiation unfold, understanding that this was about far more than a simple diplomatic agreement. This was a fundamental challenge to the Zornak's entire way of existing. The proposed agreement was nothing like traditional interspecies treaties. It wasn't about fixed boundaries or resource allocations. It was a dynamic framework for continuous mutual development. Shared research initiatives, open technological exchanges, cultural interaction programs that went beyond simple diplomatic missions. "We're not asking you to become like us," Elena said, her voice capturing the essence of human potential. "We're inviting you to explore what's possible when different perspectives come together." The Zornak collective experienced something unprecedented. Not submission, not conquest, but a genuine invitation to reimagine their own potential. As the negotiation continued, the diplomatic chamber itself seemed to pulse with possibility. Holographic interfaces showed potential future interactions. Quantum communication nodes captured not just words, but the complex dance of emerging understanding. This wasn't just a negotiation. It was a fundamental reimagining of interspecies interaction. The universe watched and waited. The Galactic Innovation Summit sprawled across 5 interconnected space stations, a testament to how much had changed in just 10 years. Where once there were battle formations, now there were collaborative research platforms. Where territorial boundaries once defined civilizations, now dynamic networks of shared knowledge pulsed with unprecedented potential. Captain Elena Rodriguez walked these halls not as a military leader, but as a diplomatic architect. Her neural interfaces, now more advanced than ever, processed complex multi-species communication streams with effortless grace. Around her, representatives from over 30 different civilizations moved in a complex dance of intellectual exchange. The Zornak delegation, no longer a rigid collective consciousness, but a diverse group of individual representatives, moved differently now. Where they once moved in perfect synchronization, now each showed subtle individual variations, traces of the human approach to existence that had fundamentally transformed their entire civilization. Dr. Aisha Nakamura stood at the Central Research Hub, presenting the latest breakthrough in adaptive technological systems. What had begun as a radical approach to understanding captured Zornak technology had become a comprehensive framework for interspecies technological development. Innovation is not about having the most advanced technology, Aisha explained, her holographic presentation showing complex adaptive systems that seemed to breathe with potential. It's about creating frameworks that allow for continuous transformation. The surrounding representatives, from silicon-based life forms to energy-based consciousness collectives, listened with a combination of fascination and fundamental recalibration of their understanding. Jack Martinez moved between research stations, his adaptive systems expertise now a cornerstone of galactic technological development. The modular, living technologies that had once been humanity's secret weapon were now a collaborative framework for technological evolution. Dr. Marcus Chen watched from a nearby observation deck, his linguistic analysis systems continuously mapping the complex interactions. The communication technologies developed during the human-Zornak conflict had transformed into a comprehensive framework for interspecies understanding. We didn't just change how technology works, Marcus often explained. We changed how civilizations imagine potential. The summit was more than a diplomatic gathering. It was a living demonstration of humanity's most profound contribution to galactic civilization. The ability to see limitation as opportunity, to transform challenges into potential. A young Zornak researcher approached Elena, her individual quantum signature dancing with a complexity that would have been impossible a decade earlier. We used to see existence as a fixed system, she said. You showed us it could be a dynamic process. Elena smiled. This was humanity's true victory, not through conquest, but through demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. The research platforms around them were living proof. Adaptive technologies that could reshape themselves. Communication systems that saw language as a dynamic, evolving process. Diplomatic frameworks that valued individual perspective and collective potential. Dr. Yasmin Chen, now leading the Quantum Potential Research Initiative, demonstrated a new collaborative research platform. It wasn't just a technological system. It was a living framework that could adapt, learn, and transform with each interaction. We're not just sharing technology, Yasmin explained. We're creating a framework for continuous mutual discovery. Outside the station, the vast expanse of space seemed to pulse with possibility. Civilizations that once saw each other as potential threats now collaborated on challenges that would have been unimaginable a decade earlier. Climate restoration projects, quantum communication networks, adaptive technological frameworks that could address challenges across entire star systems. Jack Martinez looked out at the complex network of research platforms, adaptive technologies spinning between them like a living web of potential. "We didn't conquer the galaxy," he said softly. "We invited it to reimagine itself." Elena Rodriguez understood the profound nature of their achievement. Humanity hadn't just changed how technology worked. They had demonstrated a fundamentally different approach to existence, one where potential was limited only by imagination, where challenges were opportunities, and where the most powerful technology was the ability to see beyond current limitations. The universe continued to expand, and with it, the potential for discovery.